Okay. I want to go back to something I said a little while ago about how the sounds that are just sort of redundant and constant, like the heat or the traffic, we don't pay attention to. But the sounds like the dog barking, we do. They get our attention, they tell us there's information here, wake up. Dumb information with him, but potentially good, but my brain doesn't know it's dumb until I check, right? I want to talk about how you can use that phenomenon to your advantage. What's really going on? What's different between the traffic and the dog? Think about that for a sec. Right? The traffic is constant. It's not really changing. The dog is different from the background noise, right? The dog is something either louder, well, in this, a bark, louder. The dog is, the background noise has been humming along, la la la, and then bark, loud. And that makes you look. Think about it. If you're in the library and everything is quiet and you're studying and doing whatever, and then somebody drops a book on the table, you look up. It's a change. What's making you look is change, right? And that's true in sound. It's actually true in a lot of things, right? It's contrast. We talked about contrasting color when we were talking about image creation. We talked about contrasting exposure, highlights and shadows, and that contrast makes you look somewhere, makes you pay attention to one thing and not another thing. Change makes you pay attention. So change in sound makes you pay attention. And your default is going to be make something loud in the way that if the dog were to bark right now, I would turn and look, right? And that does work. Having a relatively quiet scene and then making something loud will wake you up. Here's the thing. As a filmmaker, that works, but think about how I just said it. That's based on the premise of I was dozing off. The loud sound woke me up, right? You don't really want people dozing off. You don't really want people's minds drifting and you need a loud sound to refocus them. Ideally, you want them focused all the time. And if they're focused all the time, I'm up, I'm paying attention, I'm focused, and then you throw a loud sound at me, I'm going to back away from that. It still works. I'm still now paying attention to this, but I'm pulling away from you. What's really interesting is if you use that contrast in the other direction. If you're humming along whatever your base level sound is, which might be, normalish sounds, or it might be kind of loud sounds, things are exciting, things are happening, there's a lot going on, and then when you want somebody to pay attention, pull the sound out. Make it quiet. Because what that does, okay, it's exciting and there's chases and whatever, I'm eating my popcorn and I'm happy, and then it gets quiet, and what do? I lean in. Ooh, that's quiet. Something's gonna happen. And that act of leaning in, that's what you want. You want that contrast to make them more engaged, not pulling away from you. Right? So, I'm going to give you two different examples of this to watch. The first one is from a James Bond film, Casino Royale, which you may or may not have seen. I don't know who's into those kinds of films or not. It's kind of violent, so if you're squeamish, you could skip it. But if you're not squeamish, it's a really good example of this. The clip that I'm going to link to is like the full 10 minutes or so. I'm going to give you timestamps. I think it's like around 7 minutes where you come into it, and it's about 2 minutes that I want you to watch. You can watch the whole thing if you want, but I'm going to, for right now, I'm going to assume you're not. You're cutting into where I say to start. What's happening in those first 7 minutes that I'm telling you to not watch is a great big chase, right? It's James Bond. It's the beginning of a James Bond film. If you have seen any James Bond film, and certainly if you've seen more than one so that you can see the pattern, all James Bond films start with chaos and mayhem and death and destruction. That's the brand. And this one is no example. So it starts out with, they're in Madagascar, I think, and there's a bunch of people. Looking at something, I don't remember what it is. A bunch of people in a crowd, and Bond is there spying, because that's what he does, on this guy in the crowd who is a bomb maker. The bomb maker figures out Bond is watching and takes off running, and Bond takes off chasing after him. And now we have 7 minutes of death and destruction and chaos. And I tried to count once how many people died in those 7 minutes, and it's like 16, right? It's death and destruction and chaos. And parkour. If you have seen it, you might have seen this clip, because it was kind of famous when it came out, because it was this fantastic parkour chase through a construction and chaos, and if you like chaos, it's well done. Where you'll pick up, if you start where I say to start, is the bomber has just entered his embassy, and Bond is about to jump the fence and keep chasing him. So watch that, and then come back to me.